easy to consider a wristwatch as non-essential with the advent of the smartphone. But before this technology, watches were first and foremost utility-first pieces as the only way to keep the time on your person. As such, most renowned watchmaking houses originally produced their references for specific industries as tool-only products. Think of IWC and you'd be right to equate the brand with aviation. Hamilton, the military. Doxa and Omega, diving. The list goes on. Well, how about TAG Heuer? TAG Heuer and motorsports have been inextricably linked for decades. Although TAG Heuer, originally just Heuer, were no strangers to the track, actor and iconic king of cool racing enthusiast Steve McQueen launched TAG Heuer into the stratosphere after donning the blue-dial Monaco chronograph while racing in the film Le Mans in 1971. Just a few years prior, Jack Heuer, who would later become the last direct heir to manage the watchmaking operation, created one of the brand's most iconic references, the TAG Heuer Carrera. Inspired by the 4-year stint of the incredibly dangerous border-to-border Carrera Pan America car race in Mexico between 1950 and 1954, and his love for clean design by directly instilling the influence of Eames minimalism, Jack designed one of the world's cleanest chronographs of the 20th century, the Carrera. To this day, the Carrera, alongside the Monaco, Autavia, Formula One, and Aqua Racer, remains TAG Heuer's shining star. After its mid-century debut, the chronograph quickly cemented their racing heritage and watchmaking prowess, nearly gaining as much notoriety as Rolex, for a time. As an homage, TAG Heuer released 4 42mm chronograph versions with classic styling, staying true to the original 60s reference. In this review, we'll give an overview of its features and then talk a bit about who this watch is well suited for, at a price point just shy of $6,000. So let's dive in. There's a reason why we reviewed the Tudor Black Bay Pro and the TAG Heuer Carrera back to back, as comparing the two becomes a perfect case study as to how two very different but well-established Swiss watchmakers with ample heritage can end up in dramatically different places. As TAG Heuer became more popular as a result of their motorsports marketing strategy, only further aided by the ambassadors and eventual partnership with Porsche, they also started to mass produce in the decades leading up to the new millennium under fashion house LVMH. Despite their success, this began to alienate some of their original fanbase who felt as though the brand was casting too wide a net and losing their racing heritage charm they instilled in their vintage references. Think mass-produced movements, cheaper materials, poor quality control, all while still advertising at an elevated price point. And it's that last point that's the crux of the issue for most about modern TAG Heuer. While other Swiss heritage brands like Tudor, as of late, have worked tirelessly to bring their operation in-house in the past decade without drastically raising their prices, TAG Heuer has largely neglected their history and opted for a mass-produced model for any references that fall between $1,000 and $5,000. Despite this, the Carrera has largely pulled through unscathed and still maintains a reputation as one of the best luxury chronographs around the $5,000 mark. There's currently over 70 Carrera iterations on TAG Heuer's site, but the reference we have here is one of the most true to form in Jack Heuer's honor, so let's take a closer look at its features. The Carrera chronograph uses an extremely elegant 42mm stainless steel case with sets of angular lugs and a mix of brushing and high polish across its contours. The most recognizable features, of course, are the two chronograph pushers at the 2 and the 4 o'clock positions, framing the oversized push-pull shield embossed crown. The lugs do a great job of streamlining the case as a whole. With a thickness of 14.4mm, it's certainly not the thinnest case in TAG's catalog, but the lugs themselves taper to a sharp point and serve as leading lines, allowing the case to smoothly transition to the stainless steel bracelet when viewed from the side. Like the 60s Carreras, there were 2 notable black dial variants in 63 and 68. The case sports the same fixed and highly polished sloping stainless steel bezel with a thin flat step toward the top where it meets the dome sapphire. The capped pushers are notable but thinner than the vintage references as a modern liberty taken by TAG that still captures their essence. Operation is also really satisfying. The pushers on this classic Carrera engage without any lateral play, which is to say the build quality here is top-notch and certainly holds up to the price point. The push-pull crown is nothing to write home about. It serves its purpose and provides 100 meters of water resistance, but hey, this is a chronograph and not a diver, so you can't in good faith levy any criticism even at this entry-level luxury MSRP. On the 180, TAG provides an unhindered view of the Carrera's self-winding Heuer O2 caliber sitting below the bold central rotor. Unlike normal units, which use a half-dome shape, upon closer inspection the rotor is a 360-degree unit, reminiscent of a steering wheel, appropriately enough. It's also designed in a way that's notably abstract, so it doesn't come across as gimmicky either. We'll get into the Heuer O2 after discussing the dial. Under a large domed and remarkably anti-reflective sapphire crystal, TAG refers to the rich dial background as an opaline black. Taken literally, this seems almost oxymoronic, as opaline is an adjective for semi-opaque white. But it's just an elevated way to describe a black that maintains some semi-gloss or reflective properties under the right lighting conditions. Jack Heuer funneled his admiration for the Eames mid-century modern aesthetic into the original Carrera's dial. It was stripped down, clean, and straightforward with a classic 369 subdial layout and a monochrome background with a distinct white chapter ring. In the 2020 release, TAG carried over the same ethos using a 369 dial composition, rectangular markers, and a thin sloping chapter ring, albeit this time in a full black colorway for monochromatic edge-to-edge presentation and a date window addition at the 6. The concentric rings of the chronograph subdials is another vintage nod and really goes a long way to contrast the smooth finish of the background just one level higher. As for the 6 o'clock second subdial, the modern Carrera opts for an abstract crosshair pattern, a fitting modern addition in our opinion. The Carrera Superluminova is present on the hands, inset within the rhodium plating, but can also be located at the top of each index as thin strips in the same location as the original and glows a beautiful bright blue in the dark. Shifting to the movement, here's where we can circle back to our thoughts on the watchmaker's current reputation. Part of the criticism levied at TAG's modern operation is their prime position to bring manufacturing, specifically with their movements, in-house, instead of using mass-produced calibers like the ones from Ida or Solita, which has been a cost savings move no doubt. Don't get us wrong, these movements are some of the best for the price, but that's the thing, for the price. TAG largely markets their watches at a luxury price point without backing this up with a qualifying caliber, and they certainly have the capital to invest in in-house manufacturing, so it's a conscious choice to do one and not the other. Whereas Tudor has worked tirelessly on their manufacture calibers with most achieving COSC certification, and have only achieved full independence in the last 10 years, versus TAG, who continues to ship low-cost movements buried under flashy presentation, which has understandably upset their supporters. However, the Carrera is a different beast. In 2015, TAG seemed to get the message and announced the Heuer 01 chronograph movement based on the 1887 caliber that TAG dropped in 2010 as part of their first in-house venture. In 2017, they followed up the release with the bolstered Heuer 02, which serves as the engine for these specific Carreras. The fully Swiss-made automatic chronograph caliber operates with 33 joules, oscillates at 28,800 vibrations per hour or 4 Hz for a smooth second sweep, reserves 80 hours of power, and comes COSC certified with an accuracy of plus to minus 3 to 5 seconds of deviation per day. The finishing is also pretty stellar through the exhibition caseback. What will most definitely strike you first is the innovation with the 360-degree rotor design that certainly builds in some of their motorsports heritage. If you don't already see it, it looks like a steering wheel. In addition to the rotor, the rich visual details include Côte de Genève decoration and engraving on different parts of the caliber. The 20mm stainless steel bracelet is fairly standard. It sports a 3-link H-link design, uses a mix of high polish for the center links and vertical brushing for the outermost, and employs a branded push clasp, but unfortunately does not build in any micro adjustment points. However, it does wear very flat on the wrist thanks to the chamfered channels as part of the folding push clasp design. Critic or fan, TAG Heuer is doing just fine. Their heritage watches like the Carrera, Octavia, Monaco, etc. are well within the good graces of enthusiasts to this day and are now backed up by newly refined in-house movements. On the other hand, we can understand the criticism, and we have a couple suggestions as to how TAG Heuer could make a small pivot. For starters, we would like to see the brand consider reducing the price of any model that doesn't use an in-house movement to better reflect the market. Externally, many references between $1,000 and $4,000 look high value, and none would argue TAG designs are some of the best, but the dissonance between a beautiful looking watch and a lower value movement wrapped in a high price point tends to skew towards the fashion watch arena, and personally, we just don't love this strategy long term. Second, we'd also love to see TAG Heuer reduce the amount of models offered and focus on refining core heritage references that initially contributed to the brand's success and back them up with full in-house manufacturing. And lastly, it would be great to see TAG reposition their marketing strategy a bit in hopes of better connecting with their base the way the likes of Tudor has in the last 10 years. That being said, the Carrera itself is an outstanding chronograph, and around $5,000 you can't go wrong. And if you're someone who's looking for an entry-level luxury unit and appreciates motorsports, the Carrera should warrant your consideration.